So, in this video, I want to talk about the Khaenri'ahn Cataclysm, mainly the events that transpired back then and how it all began. Wow, because nobody has talked about that before, right? No, but seriously, I actually haven't seen that many people talk about all the reviews we've gotten about the Cataclysm since version 5.0, but there is a lot. So I hope that this video will be able to summarize all the information we have about these events together with all the new information we got in Natlan. The new lore is also based mainly on what was said in the Archon quest, but also for example on the lore of the Wings of Fate's curse intertwined, which is a new wind glider. Well, mainly on that. But as always, I must first mention a disclaimer. This video is just my interpretation of the lore, and since I don't look at leaks, I just have to use the information that's official and speculate about the rest. Also, I know that it's been quite a while since I last made a video, but lately there's been a ton of things to do on my plate, especially exams, so please forgive me for that. But without further ado, let's get into the lore. Well, I know this part is probably old news to most of you, but I still want to talk about Khaenri'ah in general a bit, just so we are all on the same page. So, as all of you know at this point, the people of Khaenri'ah pride themselves to be a nation without a god. This automatically makes their relationship with the gods of Celestia a bit awkward, since they seem to really enjoy their control of all of Teyvat and its laws, and the Seven is one of the many institutions that fulfill this role. Anyway, it's not exactly clear if they worshipped something or not back then in Khaenri'ah, since at least the first of the two dynasties, the Crimson Moon dynasty, seemed to have worshipped, well, the Crimson Moon probably. But then something we don't know much about happened, and this dynasty fell and the Crimson Moon was replaced with the Dark Sun, aka the Eclipse, and thus it became known as the Eclipse dynasty of Khaenri'ah. And this is the dynasty I will be focusing on. Until recently, we all thought that Khaenri'ah rebelled against Celestia and the Heavenly Principles, unleashing the monsters of the Abyss upon Teyvat in the process, for which they were all severely punished. But as time went on, we have been learning that things definitely were not so simple. And while the exact events of the Cataclysm and what happened before that still remains a mystery, we now know enough to make a rough picture of what transpired back then. So let's start from the very beginning. From some ancient records, we know that Khaenri'ah was established as a nation without gods after the fall of Salvin Dagnir, a civilization that was located in today's Dragonspine. And these two events may or may not have been connected. The supposed goal of building such a nation even back then seems to have been connected to humanity's independence from the gods, and all the people of the Seven Nations that didn't believe in the Seven were invited to come to Khaenri'ah and join them. But around that time in Khaenri'ah, the scholars started talking about things such as the false sky, or the possibility that the heavenly principles may have come from beyond Teyvat. And since we know that the Abyss occupies many worlds beyond Teyvat, maybe what they peered at beyond the false sky was actually the Abyss. Many Khaenri'ahn records actually state that the prosperity Khaenri'ah had was thanks to them spying upon the secrets from beyond the skies, and this way they were also able to throw off the shackles imposed by Teyvat's laws. Now comes in most of the new stuff we learned in Natlan. Back then, in Khaenri'ah, the Abyss sibling was already there, and King Irmin, who ruled over Khaenri'ah before the Cataclysm, announced his successor, which is highly implied to be our sibling, since they are often referred to as a prince or a princess, and yes, even during the age of Khaenri'ah. Our sibling back then was called the Hope of Khaenri'ah, and many believed that they would bring salvation to humankind. And since our sibling lost their own world, they yearned for this new realm that they have gotten to know over the years they spent there. We know that Vedrfolnir, Dainsleif's older brother and the prophet, was one of the 6 geniuses of Khaenri'ah, but he was imprisoned and blinded in both of his eyes for giving an oracle. This oracle was probably related to the Abyss, and maybe even to what the king was planning to do. At this point in time, Dainsleif was just appointed as the captain of the royal guards, and he received the title of the Twilight Sword. One day, the Winster King, aka King Irmin, led the traveler sibling to the deepest depths of the world. Meanwhile, Dainsleif gathered the other 4 geniuses and attempted to rescue his own brother, who he believed was unjustly imprisoned. And this way they supposedly saved the entire nation. But right after this happened, King Irmin used the traveler sibling as a vessel by which he absorbed unlimited amount of abyssal power, and thus they became the key to starting the Cataclysm. This aligns pretty well with what we've seen so far of the traveler, how he possesses the ability to absorb abyssal power. The king's plan was probably connected to the secrets that Khaenri'ahns saw beyond the false sky, and since many people believed that the sibling would bring them salvation, maybe he somehow managed to convince others of his plan. This way, the power of the Abyss was brought upon Teyvat, and Vedrfolnir, along with the other 4 geniuses of that era, were unfortunately not able to resist this power. So instead of stopping the Winster King from bringing upon this disaster, they divided amongst themselves the power that could destroy the entire world, and became transcendent beings. They later became known as the 5 Sinners of Khaenri'ah, and because Dainsleif alone, together with some others like presumably Piero, were not able to stop King Irmin, the Cataclysm was triggered. Following the invasion from the monsters of the Abyss, the Khaenri'ahns fought bravely to push them back, But the five sinners did nothing to defend Khaenri'ah, and the efforts of the people were not enough to stop all the monsters. Eventually, as even the forbidden knowledge started spreading, the seven, except Great Lord Kadevata, were called to Khaenri'ah to stop the disaster. Eventually, they were mostly able to stop this disaster, although not without many sacrifices. What's interesting is that throughout this whole disaster, a red sky could be seen in Khaenri'ah, together with the Crimson Moon, which is really interesting considering the fact that the Crimson Moon dynasty was supposed to be long gone at this point. And with the very possible ties to Runova, the presence of the Crimson Moon would make sense, but would also imply that what Khaenri'ah worshipped in the previous dynasty may have been actually Runova, whether they knew about it or not. But that may just be me, since lately there has been a lot of giant terrifying eyes in Genshin lore. Anyway, after all of this happened, supposedly Runova, aka the ruler of death, suddenly appeared and cursed the people of Khaenri'ah for their sins with two curses, both of which were so strong and so engraved into Teyvat that they can be called rules. Well, ever since the end of Natlan Arc Conquest, we know for sure that Runova was the one who cursed the Khaenri'ahns, but it also seems like the curse was decided by the Heavenly Principles, since it's so important, and from the few scenes we've had with Runova so far, she doesn't seem like someone who would necessarily enjoy torturing humans like that, since she helped Natlan in the past, yet she insists that this curse has to stand. Well, anyway, the first curse is the well-known Curse of Immortality, and the other is the Curse of the Wilderness. They were distributed according to the status of Khaenri'ahns. So the pure bloods were declared the greater sinners, and were cursed with immortality, while others became villagers or other monsters as they tried to escape from Khaenri'ah. But as Capitan clarifies during the Arc Conquest, most of Khaenri'ahns knew nothing of the five sinners and King Irmin's abuse of abyssal power, including him. They were innocent, yet they were still all unjustly cursed for the sins they didn't commit, which is also the reason why many of the surviving Khaenri'ahns hate Celestia and the Heavenly Principles so much. By the way, this includes the Traveler's sibling, who makes their hatred towards the Heavenly Principles very clear during the bedtime story, mainly in regards to Khaenri'ah, who is the exact example of someone who knew nothing about what happened in Khaenri'ah. He was even too young to know anything, yet he was still cursed and became a villager. Speaking of the Heavenly Principles, they have been silent ever since the Cataclysm, which could be caused by whatever terrifying thing the Winster King released upon Teyvat. Whatever it was probably bad enough that the Heavenly Principles decided that only a curse of such magnitude would be enough of a punishment for Khaenri'ahns. This probably weakened them so much that they have been asleep for more than 5 centuries. Well, the Heavenly Principles were also severely weakened even before that, because of their fight with the second Wu Kane, at least according to Nuvilat, so it probably makes sense. But that will be all for this short video. I hope this somehow summarized what happened before and during the Cataclysm in Khaenri'ah. And apparently there is a new book about Khaenri'ah, but I read it only very briefly so far, so I hope there isn't hiding anything that disapproves the information I said in this video. I don't think there is, hopefully. Anyway, I also hope that you enjoyed this video and that you maybe even learned something new. And with all that out of the way, take care and I'll see you in the next one.